మేడం లైవ్కి వెళ్ళిపోయింది. మీకు ఇంకేం అవ్వక్కర్లేదు. మీరే అన్మ్యూట్
Good morning, participants. Yesterday we have seen unit testing and component testing and snapshot testing. In that part, we have completed unit testing. Now we will be seeing an example on component testing. So as usual, we have to create your own component on which you are going to test. You can create your functional component or class component or whichever manner you want to create a component. And there are different ways to test them also. And today we will be checking out what are the different available functionalities and how you have to exactly test them. That is how you are going to write the already available test libraries. And the other important thing is we have to keep in mind that we are going to implement most of the parts we are going to implement with jest only. For few reasons we are going for enzyme, and yesterday we have saw the important concept of enzyme, that is your shallow, how we are using your shallow and creating it. So I hope everyone remember the testing part. Everyone is all right. So today our main aim is to completely understand how to test all the functionalities, like all the features available in React. And once we complete this, we are going to enter into the Redux Create Store, and we are going to see how we can achieve the entire Redux architecture. So that is the main aim of the today's class. So now we have created our mycomponent.js. You can see here, and there is only one single label which is being returned here, and we have to test whether it is able to return the exact prop of the label. Now this is our mycomponent.test.js. Now whenever you create a component, you have to create its own test file also, and the naming convention, we remember, it is mycomponent.test.js. So what I request you all is, please try to create yourself also this one. All right. So we have seen similarly, yesterday we have written describe. To our describe, you can pass whatever message you want to pass once the test is successful. And after that, what you have to do is you have to give a callback function as usual. And to that, we are going to assign our test function. And inside our test function, you're going to write what we have to test. So this is the part you're going to do. Now, if you observe here, we have used to be truthy. So what it does is, whenever it is true, it will return you its exact value. So that's the actual meaning. So we are utilizing that also. Now, if you observe test also, you are passing the first argument, the test string, whichever has to be passed. And then what happens is there is a callback, similar manner, and you are rendering your component. To that, you are giving your prop as get by text. So you are testing that get by text is able to satisfy the actual text display of the label. So whenever I pass my label as test, so the same thing you are checking here. So expect, yesterday we have seen expect that it is the functionality which will state what is that you are exactly expecting. this part is clear to everyone. Now let us get into the exact thing, like whenever I run my test case, what exactly happens. So there is a toggle which will help you in how to test these functionalities. So what I would request is, whoever is in front of the system, please make use of this, so that only one test suit is written and one test has to be passed. So I'm posting this in the chat itself. This you can apply for the any React application, and of course Jest should be installed. We have seen Jest installation command yesterday, and you should save it in the dev dependency. That is install npm install this is your component .test.js, and inside this we have our entire test being written. I request you all to please try this and check whether the test suite is passed, and as well as the test case is also passed. Now, this is the way you check your component. You have to be clear. Like what I am checking is whether the given label is displaying the exact prop or not. So what the value is passed is the check. So not to do that, you should get by check is used, and as well as to be truthy means that it is true, it will return true. So that is the reason we are doing this. Okay. Now let us go for snapshot testing, one of the important testing available in the React component. So why snapshot testing is, it will especially help you in declarative UI approaches. And whenever there is a number of lines of HTML to be checked, then you can directly go with snapshot testing. So I hope you all achieved the output. May I know how many participants have achieved the output? How many of you got test passed and test cases also passed? Both of them. This is a simple React application. In this, you have to include only my component.js and my component test.js. So only these two things you have to include. Any doubts until now? All right, let me first explain you what exactly is snapshot testing, and then we will slowly move into the next part. So for this, let me take pen so that I can explain you exactly. All right. So one of the important concepts in the testing is snapshot testing, and the test cases are usually written by the developer itself. Right? So this is our snapshot testing. And the first point we have to remember is what is snapshot testing exactly. So snapshot testing, as the word means snapshot, it is a photograph which has already taken quickly, and we have this kind of snapshot for React component too. And assume if you have taken one of the component and it contains of some two labels or inputs or images or whatever it is, then we are going to take the entire snapshot of the entire coding of that particular component. So this way snapshot testing will help you compare each and every component and test exactly what is happening inside the like functionality of the component. I hope now I am clear. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Now, what I said already is snapshot is something like a photograph like thing, like you can simulate the word exactly. Now, what happens here is every snapshot will capture what are the lines of codes of a component we have written. Let us suppose I have written two labels and two inputs, and there is a one image, and there is one submit button for a login form. It will capture the entire JSX whatever you have written, and it will test according to the whatever already present component is there with the help of your test file which you have written. So this means like how exactly you try to do is you try to test your test file and run it and see the expected behavior inside that. You wrap what the snapshot you have taken and you try to match it to the present component as a string itself. So what happens, these two get compared and they will give you the exact execution of the coding is being written correct. So this way you can do it in the easier manner. So that is the exact reason why we have to go with snapshot testing. And mainly React is nothing but model view controller where everything is controlled by a component, and a component is a binding of all the CSS, JSS and all the other things which is present. And whenever you pass such kind of test, the test suite is only one, but the test cases are as many number of like the JSX attributes you have been used. So if you have written two labels and two inputs and one image and a submit button, then it will be totally five. So that is the count. can see here. Suppose in my component I have a login form, and under that I have name, and then I have some password. Okay, so there are two labels, name and password, and before that you will be having a input field to take these inputs. Here also you will be having input field. Okay. And of course there will be, let us suppose one logo here, which is an image. Yes. Is an image, and then finally what you will have is your submit button. Now what happens is, this will try to, whenever I say snapshot, it will capture all the codes which have been written, this entire thing, and it will display. So now let us go for the coding part. So most of the component testing is directly done with snapshot testing itself. So just 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. So here if you observe, as usual we have our app.js, and in our app.js, as I already told you, you'll have everything which you have to render upon, and the most important thing is how we are creating our JSX. So that part you can check here. What are all the necessary components I have been creating it here, and to that we have also written the routers also. And I have used switch as usual, and every path is being written here. Now let us suppose I want to take the test for login. Then for this itself I will be writing the test cases, and in your snapshot folder you can create the snapshot like this. Like this is the folder, we name it ourselves, and to that you have to name the file as app.test.js.snap. So this is the important point. Previously it was app.test.js, and now whenever you want to take a snapshot and test, it should be app.test.js.snap. So that is very important. And I'll just keep it here, the chat, so that everyone can easily take it. Yes. So now what happens is, once when you use this, you can observe the entire code whichever we have written, along with all the components which has to be included. Yes, the entire part is available in our snapshot. Now how you write the test case is, As usual, you take your describe, and inside your describe, you take test now. So whenever you are taking test, you have to be clear whether you are using enzyme shallow or you are going for just. So for this, we are using enzyme shallow and mount. And then configure is already established in your setup.test. Yesterday we have seen the same configuration. And if you observe, I am taking the adapter of enzyme. So this configuration of enzyme is completed here. So now we can easily use our configure. Alright. So now I have my own configure where I am passing my new adapter. So wherever I have to use, I can use the new adapter. Now, so the same thing as we did before. You pass the first argument, your string, whichever has to appear once the test case is true. So in my describe, I have app component testing. So it is clear to everyone that the type of testing I am doing is a component testing. So whenever you go for component testing, the better approach is snapshot testing. You can use snapshot testing for other test cases also, but it is meant for especially for component testing. So the message I am passing is app component testing entirely, and there is a callback, and I start with, I'll make this size bigger so that it will be clear. So my first point is snapshot testing. I start my snapshot testing here. If you observe, again we are using test function itself, and inside that my first variable is snapshot testing for app, and there is a callback, and with that I try to render my component and I create my router. So once this happens, you can check exactly what is happening. So the simplest way is whatever snapshot I have taken here, yes, it has to match with the entire app component coding. So in order to write that, we have to match snapshot. So whatever is present in this entire app component, it has to match to the snapshot. This is the first step. So in order to do that only, I am routing here to my app component. So this way you test it, the first snapshot. And second, you have to render the whole application. Render is you check your declarative UI, that is you check your user interface. For that purpose, we will use one of the mount available in enzyme. And why we are using this is you have to check the exact place where the UI is rendering in the browser. For this, you are using one of the lifecycle components, did mount, and from there you fetch your necessary things. And here again you can observe that for the test, I've written render app component. So observe the word I have given render app component, that is check your UI, it means. So next what happens is whenever the render isolated component you have to pass it to your shallow which is present in your enzyme. And then you start testing your elements. So here you can see the numbering given is 1.1 and 1.2. So these are the first two steps you have to complete to start the testing of declarative UI, and thereafter the subtest cases are testing the elements. First one is what is present is h1 element and it has to represent me hello, and then there is a paragraph element and it has to give me the name Venkatesh. Yes, 2 equal to will state that it is true. That means the element is present. That means the h1 is present. And when I give 2b, I check the value. That means for the paragraph, whatever values are given, I will be checking. I won't check whether the class is present or label is present for the paragraph. So in that case, you have to use 2b. And then next, if you come, the next subcomponent is this one, header. So for that, you can directly pass your shallow, and even you can write sub-test cases as above. For that, you should put your things as 2.3.1, because in 2.3 you have your shallow of header component. So if you write the subunits, you have to put it as 2.3.1, 2.3.2, and whatever is present in head, it is one of the nav, and inside the nav you have different links for your navigation menu. So for each menu, you can check whether the menu name is correct, and for each menu you can check whether the link is correct, and for each menu you can check when you click on to which component it goes. The route also you can check. And of course, you have to check the routes in the header component. For now, we are seeing only the exact shallow, that is passing your app, and it's the subcomponents. You have to write even for the subcomponents its own subcomponents testings also. So then next part is testing state in class. How you will test a state in a class component is very, very important. Until now, we have seen how we are testing the heading part, how we are testing the paragraph part, and how we are testing the label, and how we are directly testing the entire component. Now, it is come to how to test a state. The thing you have to understand is whenever there is a state, it has a shallow of its class, and you have to pass that, and you have to pass the state name, and as well as you have to check what is the value it has to render. So whenever I check for value, it is too big wherever it is. And next you have to check functional components. In order to do that, everything is same. The only thing is you pass your app directly, and the expectation is whether to find the paragraph or not. So similar manner, you can keep on writing the remaining test cases. If you need any explanation in this, please let me know. So is this part clear, participants? So whenever we want a particular type of test case to be written, we have to be clear with what type of test we are going to do, and with what we are going to do, whether a component or whether a label or heading or header, and how you have to check for that what is the functionality available in just an enzyme has to be cross-checked. So each time when you do this, you can just check with the library itself, and there everything is available. The important things which you have to remember about is one is your describe, another one is your test, and how you write a callback, and for what all you can write your callback. And of course a test should always follow with its expect, because once you test you should tell that what you are trying to expect behavior from the particular test case written. So this is the common thing. And the another important thing which you have to observe is I can open only one describe for one JS file. So you need not open 2-3 describes, and then you can write how many ever test cases you want. If you run this, you can understand easily. So it is there are not only test cases, but the sub-test cases also different. So the most important thing is button. Button is usually checked not only for the button caption, for the button functionality also. Like you can write it for on click, and you can find whether it happens or not. All these three things has been written here itself. If you check, you'll find whether the button is present or not, and then you see how it simulates its click, and then you check whether it is having the text preview. So all these things are important. So next, let me proceed with the Redux component. For that, I will share you this. I will share you the entire code also. But for now, suppose if anyone wants to test each one of this, they can go with this. If you want to write, or if you need any help in writing the test. Like no problem, I am unable to copy it because it is very big. So let me share this with you so that you can try it thereafter. And for now, I will send only this button part. So what you can do is you can create a component and create a button and test this one. If anyone is sitting in front of the system, this will be helpful. So just give me 2 minutes. I will start with Redux Store, where we are going to see how to create, how to dispatch, and how to subscribe and how to unsubscribe. Meanwhile, any of the participants, if you have any doubt in the testing part, in the types of testing available in React, or in the just an enzyme part, or in any installation part, if there is any doubt, please let me know. You can write in the chat also. It's not necessary that you have to speak upon. So everyone understood how we are going to do testing in React. So the snapshot testing is clear for everyone, right? So now you can do all the three types of testing. One is your unit testing, and then integration testing, and then the snapshot testing. So the important concepts of React are React class, React props, and React hooks. And thereafter you have your implementation of Flux architecture, and then your Redux module. Suppose you want to implement Flux architecture, you have to go with your Redux module only. And after that, we have seen how to use server-side rendering and how the cons of server-side rendering are taken away, and where you have to actually go with server-side rendering. What's the difference between client-side rendering and server-side rendering? So all these things we have seen. In order to implement the exact server-side rendering, what are all the functionalities available, how you have to create your server file separately and client file separately. You can write a switch case where you have variable to send pass your server file JS or your client file JS. So for an application, you can do these both type of rendering, and that is known as isomorphic app. And in your server-side rendering, you know the steps. The very first step is to listen to your server, and then you have to check whether the server is on or not. Then the second part is to bind all your JS and CSS. We have seen the syntax for that also. And thereafter, you have to check with your next part. You have to check with your what are all the next things are available. Alright, today's topic is store. Store in React. Just keep it. So already you remember the Flux architecture. There is an action. It starts with action. Right? So it starts with one of your actions. So suppose that you have to write action creators also, and that day we have seen how to syntaxes for how to write action and how to write action creators and all. And then finally, these action creators will help you to bind your data. For that, you'll be writing your APIs. Tomorrow we'll be seeing how to connect to an API, and the steps are, first one is your action, and inside that you have your action creator. So let us take it this as one. Flux, you all remember, it is unidirectional flow of data, and the main point is it flows in one direction. The architecture you all remember, right? And for this Flux architecture, we have our action to be described. I hope everyone remember. There is an action and there is an action creator. This is 1.1, and you have a dispatcher. For every dispatcher, we have seen that there is a store. And store is one of the important concepts. And today we are going to see exactly store and React. A very, very important concept. So store is one which is going to help you in exact callback value. Okay. So now, until now, we have seen the technical terms of what we are going to do. Now, let us see the explanation part. For this, let me again go to the paint. Here, if you observe, so by the name itself, store, it will help you with the necessary stores to be written. Now, the official way, like how a Redux produces you the store, it can happen within your component or outside your component. So store holds the entire tree of the application. Of course, it has to hold because it is the place where you are trying to give a callback. So it has to have all the necessary states binded as a tree. The only way to change the state inside it is to dispatch an action. So we have seen here how we are able to take the dispatch over here. Right? If suppose there is an action, okay, whenever there is an action, it goes to the dispatcher, and the dispatcher helps you with the store. So what I exactly mean is a store is not a class, it is just an object with few methods on it, and to create it, pass your root directory reducing function to create store, and Redux has already built in create store and as well as combined reducers. Combined reducers we have already covered it in the reducer part. We have used already combined reducers. Let us suppose if you are coming from Flex, and there is a single important difference you need to understand. Redux doesn't have a dispatcher or a support and many stores. It has only a single store and single root and single reducing function, which we have covered already. From that, if you want to do, you need a support. So the next part, what they did is they have written a separate thing, and that is your create store. And why we are speaking from that time about create store is a part which will help you to connect to your API externally, that is out of your application and as well as within your application. The main reasons why you have to go for external data and what is the meaning of this API, application programming interface, and what it has to do. So this part we will be checking for 5 more minutes, and then we can quickly enter into exact methodology. Now, let us suppose I have a flight booking app. I have a flight booking app. Okay. Now what happens in this app is I have to give my customers the fare tickets, okay, at lowest rate. Yes or no? Because usually the customer's mentality is to check which booking website is giving me the lesser tickets. Yes. So this is what we are interested into. So any flight booking app has integration with different number of flight services. Yes, sir. It can be Air India. Yes. And thereafter, if you check, it can be SpiceJet, etc. So all these you can find in flight booking app 1 and as well as flight booking app 2. In both these apps, yes, you are able to see all the services provided by SpiceJet and as well as Air India and as well as Indiegogo, etc., etc. So all these are present. Now, the important part you have to understand here is the data of Air India will never change. The data of SpiceJet will never change. If there is a particular flight for Hyderabad to Chennai, it will have those many seats only in the flight, and there is no change in number of seats in the flight. Yes, if here it is written A1, the seat for A1 is present there only, not only for booking app 1 but also for booking app 2, both the places. It is the same. And how they capture is, suppose the app 1 is providing 50% off, let us say, or the app 1 is providing 50% off, let us say. And at that time, what happens is the rate, the exact rate, and the rate by the app is something differenced by 50%. And booking 2 does the same thing, but it provides how much percent? Let us suppose 25%. So it is something less over app. Yes, this flight booking app 2 is providing less in percentage than this app 1. So which one the customers will select more is wherever there is the cost of 50%. So you understand that these two apps are taking the help of some interface, okay, the exact point which we are interested here is these two apps are taking the interface for Air India and as well as SpiceJet. And once they have terms and conditions applied here that this will be the percentage of profit for me and this will be your returns on from my side. And similarly, app 2 fellow also will do the same. I will take this much profit and I will be returning you this much. So the data whichever is available in app 1 and app 2 are the data of Air India and as well as SpiceJet. So these two things are in separate places, right? That this unit of data and this unit of data has to be put into both of the apps. And this is the real place where, I'm sorry, this is a real place where application programming interface enters into. So now with the help of application programming interface only, what I try to do is I try to fetch the data which is available, the backend data which is available in Air India. So here I write my own HTTPS and I set my own API, and here this app also I write my own API configuration. So this is how the actual application works. So now let us see technically what exactly happens. And now what we have to understand is there are store methods. The first one is get state, and then there is a dispatch. If every dispatch will carry action as an argument, and this part we have covered already. It is the same syntax in the store also. Then there is a subscribe which will take a listener. Every subscribe has to take a listener, and then only it will be able to subscribe the current event. And this subscribe can be unsubscribed. For that you have to write your own code or functionality at which point you want to unsubscribe. And finally you have replace reducer. Previous in the Flux architecture we have seen combined reducer, but if you are using store itself exclusively, then you have to go with replace reducer, and it will take what are all the next reducers available. Now let us return to our PowerPoint. So today we are going to see how to use store in order to write your own APIs and connect it to the external interface. You all understand that every app has its own app.js, and this app.js is trying to utilize the store as many times as possible to get the data from the store. And the data whichever you are going to store in your app, it can be an internal data from your JSON file itself or an external data from any other resource. It can hold any type of data. So the diagram is clear, everyone? No. You, as I already told, you set properties to this, and the first method is also text. So in that you can set how these different stores has to be recognized and called for your component. That is your app.js or any component you want it to. And you set properties to your subcomponent. For that you have functionality in set store itself. You can make use of your this one. And the advantage of such type of architecture is like whenever you want to fetch a data from one store to all of the components, you can go by writing one store and then implementing them with the other components. and each component will get its own store with its own properties. Any property you can assign it to functionality. The main part is once you store, you are trying to dispatch it, and for every dispatch you will be carrying its own action. So that is the another important thing which you have to remember. As I told you already, each change or each call, whatever is happening in the data part, is named as your atom, and this combined state of changes are known as molecules. So now this is a very lowest level of understanding the data binding, and that's why store is very important to understand any React concept. So you can see this entire thing combinedly, if you change this named as molecule. And React virtual DOM exactly happens here. As I told you, if there is any change in this part of store and that data is being rendered into your component, only that part of atom is being set. So these are the important things. Let us rewind quickly. You have your action and you have a dispatcher. For every dispatcher, you have to send your action as an argument. And then there is a callback, and the callback happens only with the help of your store. So this point is clear, right? Let us take one of the case study. There is a development time of 4 weeks, and you want to develop that particular app like music play. They have given you 4 weeks of time, and the selected architecture is pure Flux architecture. And whenever you are going with Flux architecture, you have to understand that it is possible only with the help of Redux. And suppose you are not using Redux, you are just creating your app with your React as usual, then it will come under model view controller architecture. So this point has to be clear. And then finally, I have 4 stores. One is your player store, and then your channel store, and then your user store, and then your app store. And here there are 4 things, right? I request my participants, can any one of you tell me where is the need for an external data and which all will help me with the internal data? I have player store, channel store, and user store, and app store. In this, for which part I will go with external data? It's general real-time thing. You can correlate with the word and help me with the answer. Can anyone help me from these 4 stores where I will go with external data? I don't have the data within my app, and I'm going to fetch that data from something outside. Which part I will be doing that? You can put me the answer in the chat also, whichever way is flexible. Just give a try, even if it is wrong also, it's totally okay. I just want to know that everyone is clear with how you're going to connect with your external data and as well as your internal data. Any one of the participants? Can you help me? See, player store is something from which you are directly going to operate. And user store is also something which you will have the number of users registered with your own app. An app store is exclusively your own store. Channel store is something where you try to match with the different channels. And player store is also something where an external data will be needed. So these 2 things you have to bind it to your external. Now there are different case studies, and in every case study there is one difference. Like you are using Flex only, but the major differences are it's here we are going to implement router also along with Flex. So that is one of the major differences. All right. So let us see. Here you have 8 stores, 13 components along with 16 states. So the practices are usually store itself and other third-party libraries. Apart from that, we have seen already component did mount and component unmount. And next is, as usual, you create your JSX and you create your stateless components or functional components. Usually you go with stateless components because the state is internal or external. So whatever you have to bind with the external, like if there is some prop and you want to carry out, you can go with this. And should component be updated, and that should be wisely done. So this is the theoretical part of exactly how you are going to do your store. And let us see the coding structure now. Just give me some time so that I will share you the code. And meanwhile, if you have anything to ask about store, why store, already we have Redux, right, for the data binding. I explained you why store also with the example of flight booking apps. Why do you need an application programming interface, or what is an application programming interface, and etc. Right. Now let me know if you have any other doubts or anything else to clear until I open the code. Okay, how many of you can help me with mutable and immutable? I just want to know what is the meaning of these two words. I don't want to know anything technically. Can anyone help me? Mutable, immutable. See, immutability is one part which is achieved with store. And if you say an object is mutable, you're able to update the object depending upon the necessary parameters or the way you enter your props or something, and the way you call your object with the help of your constructor also if you are implementing super. The store is one which is immutable. So once you store something in that, it is up to that only, and whatever is fetched is always available in your store. So you have to remember the most important thing is it is immutable. So let me help you. Let us start our slide. So we have already seen the Redux concepts, action types, actions, and action creators and reducer, and maps, and then store. The most important thing of Redux is it's a clean unidirectional flow of data, and changes are in one place. And any state, if you create, it will be your old state plus your changes. And this is of course because of your implementation of virtual. The state can be easily changed. And if you remember the definition, store is something which is always impact is given on the state itself. Now let us suppose there is an increment and decrement, and you have its own component also which will return them, and then you have a counterpart where you are trying to implement the exact functionality. Let me use this pointer so that it will be clear. You can see here how I have taken the value. These are the action types which we are writing, and these are the creators we are going for. Okay. And reducer means it will help you to bind with the necessary action type. So in order to achieve that, we are using switch case. This part we have seen already in the previous example itself, where we wrote add an item and delete an item, if you remember the example. So here I am sending my increment, and here I am sending my decrement, and here is the exact place where I am actually doing the changes. Until now this is clear. The next thing which you have to remember is there must be different types of like JSON values, and if you see, this is at index 0 and this is at index 1, and the data is same, ID, author and text, everything is same. So keep in this part of JSON in the mind, the structure and how it is actually working. So you have 3 keys here, the initial index and as well as in the second index, and you can see the total items are 2. This representation you usually store in an array. And then you have a React app with Redux. Okay, this part we have already completed, and the implementation which we are interested into is this dot props. How you are carrying your props on this entire change. The first thing starts with your action, and whenever you have an action to handle, you go with your dispatcher, which will take your action into it. And in order to do this, you can see here you're using your reducer and then Redux state to props. So this is the reason why we are going for stores. Okay, and you try to render whatever action has been completed. When you go to render, it is general that you have already binded your data with your application. So these are your action types. Similar manner, you can see the previous example we have done, and you have your action creators. Everything is same. With the help of switch case, you are trying to switch your actions, and you are going to perform your necessary things. Why there is need for immutable JS? So that is the important thing. Why we are going for such component known as store and which carries immutable states. So that is the place actually you have to understand things. Now what I am doing is from my entire JSON, which was available here at the index 0, all right, at this point, I am trying to handle this action dot payload dot id. The payload is the entire data which comes from your connect API. Whichever API you have connected to write a connect API for that, and from that you gather your payload, and for every payload I am trying to store whichever data is present. Okay, the data is present here, right? This is the data which you have fetched. Once you fetch your data through your API, you represent it as your JSON. So now here at this point only, you are trying to do the thing which has to be actually done. You are binding your action to your dispatcher, and each state, that is each whichever state I am sending, you can see it is a state for everything. and I try to slice it from this two items and taking only the first one with the slice. Sorry. And then I set my action.payload.author, a set variable I assign, and this part is where I'm achieving my immutability. Sorry. This Redux app, you can check what I have written for the index 0 and as well as index 1. So this is the text I want to pass whenever I am going to render this. This is the command and this is the another one. Okay. For that, what we are trying to do here, if you see, I'm sorry, again. Here, if you see the state whichever you have written, or you are trying to utilize it here along with your action. Okay. In this component comment tag, you are trying to use that, and what we are trying to understand is whenever you return this, okay, you have to return it along with the state and its action. So I say state.comments along with the action. So the final output will be this text along with the data from the index one. And suppose if I given some action to it, then that will be also performed. So this, let us suppose that this is the data for author 1 and this is the data for author 2. Then that data will be commented upon here along with the text which you have passed. Once you are able to see this, the command, then that means you have successfully implemented your stateless component along with the property of the store, which is immutable. So this part is achieved. Now, React components without state, only props. You can do this same thing using only props also. So I'll just give you 2 minutes of time. You can tell me if you have any doubts here. All the participants, please unmute yourselves. All the participants. I think everyone went through how to create a store, how to create a state, how to create a props. All right. Now writing Redux Store to React props. What you have to do here is exactly you have to create your state and as well as your prop, and then you pass it to your React DOM reducer as usual we do. Now the important point here is you try to store it in your store. You can see how we are trying to achieve this with the help of provider. You're trying to store your React props, and here is the place where you actually try to do immutability. Immutability happens when there is a reducer and there is a comments and there is a state and an action. And the action type, and there is a case for each and every action you are going to perform. And this is the functionality which you write has to happen. Okay. Action dot payload, as I have already explained you, action dot payload will help you in the real placement of your data. You can see from which data you are carrying from your generated JSON. The generated JSON can be your external from your external API also. And once you load your ID here, and once you load your other updates of the state which has to happen with your action.payload.author or whatever it is, the important point how you make it immutable, how you create your immutable helpers. Yes, you can observe here, I gave an update on the add upon. I'm passing my state along with IDX. Okay, that is your action.payload.id. And then I try to return my react.add-ons upon the update along with the state and as well as the immutable state which I have created. And this will finally return you, I'm sorry, not here. This will finally return you the value of the array as you push. You can see the output here. You push all elements in an array on the target, that is to your store, and then you unshift all elements in the array, and then you slice it, and then you use each item, that is index 0, 1, 2, 3 in this part. So all these three parts have been achieved with the help of store and Redux Store implementing props. Not implementing state, it's implementing props. In the previous example, we have seen how it implements state. And here you are trying to implement your props. You can see map state to props. And that is your command. And how you reduce as usual with your React reducer.provider. And this is the place you create your immutable store. And that store you are utilizing here to update your state. Alright. The only difference is the way you try to achieve it. There are few ways to utilize your state or utilize your props, and store is a module, you can say the module which provides you with 4 functionalities. One is to create store, and the one is to subscribe and unsubscribe, and then your reducers. So all these for all these operations you have functions available. You have to write it exactly in the similar manner we did at the part of Redux architecture, but there are changes in the way you use your state and props, and that is what we have been checking for. Every time you write your dispatcher, pass your action, and then finally you write your reducer. The concept must be vague, but we all have to concentrate on how we are trying to do and what is the difference between you directly using Redux and what is the difference between when you try to use a create store for your database. So these are the 2 important things which you have to remember. In every part, what happens is, as usual, there is an action, And once the action is passed upon, the dispatcher carries the action, and there is a callback. Meanwhile, you set a state on change for your Ajax, and whenever you submit a HTTP post, your action reducer is called upon. And for this, you make utilization of component did mount in the component lifecycle. And the current example we have used only props in order to connect to the back. And once this is binded from your store, it's easy to render. Always this part, when you come to this stage, it is to render. Here they have used HTTP post, but you have to use HTTPS always. Previously we were using HTTP and we used to write the code, encoding the part also. Okay. So along with your dispatch, you pass your action. Your action is request features. So this is your action. So when you go to the value for the request features, which has already been written here. Okay. And you receive your features with the help of the external API, whatever you have written. And here your payload receives the JSON. Okay. Once you pass this, this will be the type of receive. If you observe here, you try to fetch. Is it clear? This part API. This is the URL where you are able to fetch your external data. And in the response, you convert it to your JSON. This is the syntax. You have to write response with your arrow function. You try to convert that to your JSON. And once this JSON has been processed, you try to dispatch it with along receive features. So inside your action, you are passing your JSON. All right. So how we did it? We did it with unidirectional flow, and then we check whether the state is mutable or immutable. You take a state which is already mutable, and you then go with your props or states, whichever you want, and then you come to the exact point, that is your immutable JS. This is the actual point. Immutability helps you, and there are few middlewares which you use with the help of your Redux, like already we did. So these are the most dependencies we use, Babel and Webpack. Now, before proceeding into the program, I want to understand that how many of you really understood the syntax. And participants, please see that my voice is audible to you all. If in any case my voice is not audible, please let me know, because we have to help participants who are into the live streaming also. So please help me. So let me share the code with you. So the first thing is 4 main functionality. First one is get your state, either to state or props in whichever manner you want. Then you dispatch your action, and then you subscribe your listener, and then you release your radius. I request you all to keep noting that there is no problem in the voice. Please, everyone, if there is a problem in listening to the voice, or if you need anything you want to tell, please, you can unmute yourself and let me know. You can create multiple stores also. It's not necessary that you have to create your single store, and you can use stores to implement many features like send emails and send notifications also, because you have an entire data binded over there. You can utilize them. Right. The same example which we have seen earlier. Okay. Here we have our Redux Store, and you can import create store, okay, from your Redux itself. And whenever you are going for create store, you go with importing this. And if you are trying to subscribe or unsubscribe something, then you can utilize the same thing, okay. And for dispatchers, now don't worry about the reducer function. First you see how you are creating your store. You have taken your const as usual, and you create your store, and with the help of your create store function, you set the counter component here. So you're creating store for this particular counter. Inside your counter, you can observe you're passing your immutable state, okay, and then your action. And I have already created my actions, so I'm using them. If you want, you can create it in the same file or in the different file in any manner. I told you the actions are increment and decrement, you remember, I hope, and for that only we have written this. And just give me 1 moment. Let me shift to the PPT also, so that it will be clear what example we are dealing with exactly. All right. So you remember these are the action types for increment and decrement, and these are the action creators we are writing, and this is the reducer part. The same example now we are seeing here. Let me go to the code now. So if you all remember the example, so this is how we are going to create, and what we are implementing here is create store, and from create store you have to write your own component also. This one we have written, okay, render counter. If you observe here, as I increment, it increments, and as I decrement, it decrements. And in the console, you can check. Give me a moment. Okay, 1 second. Already you can see the incrementation and the decrementation. All right, I am reducing now and started incrementing. So the actual thing we are interested is how you dispatch your action. Okay, for every button click, you can see on click I have written a store dispatch I have given, and one button is for decrement, another button is for increment. You can see how I am directly passing my action type into this button, and this action type is actually mapped to my prop, whichever I am sending to the state. So now you see that the app component is making use of the render counter. Okay, here is the actual place I am rendering. You can see I have written the console log here. So here you are able to render your binded value, that is you fetch the data from your store here. You can see store dot get state. Okay. and the state and the action are written here with the counter component where I implement reducer function. So here is the action type I am sending, and depending upon that the case will execute. So this is successfully going to your reducer. That's why you are able to increment it or decrement it. You can observe in the console. Okay. All right. Let me give you a brief gist about what we are actually doing today. We are trying to actually, I'm sorry. So the concept of Redux is already seen, right? In that we have seen action types, actions, and action creators. After that we have reducers, and after that you have app, and after that you have mappers, and then store. And today's concept we are interested in is store, and how you create your store, and how you implement your store, and how implementing store itself can achieve you the Flex architecture. The entire working of Flex architecture can be done only with the help of store itself. Of course, you have to write your state, you have to implement your actions and reducers, everything you have to write it yourself. But the only one thing you can find it here is whenever you go for your state, you should make it as immutable state and store your data in that and make it immutable. So that part you can do with your Redux. You can see the code here. And this is how you implement your initial state and as well as your other things where the type of state is defined or undefined, and you try to return your all the state along with the action. Okay. The most important thing is how you do with your Ajax and how you do with your external API connect. So these are the two things. You can see here how you are trying to fetch your data and how you are trying to return the dispatch, and how into the dispatch you're sending your action, that is your receive features. You can see here dispatch receive feature, and then the JSON has to be sent here. In all these, there are things which appear complex, but the one thing you have to remember is in the inbuilt library, we already have the syntaxes available. So we have to understand only the library and the return function, and we can use them in whichever manner we want. Not necessary that you have to use in the manner I have written the code. You can use it in any manner, and you can implement any type of action there. Not only an increment decrement was a simple button action where I want to exactly explain how you are going to use the action types, how you are going to use the store, and how you are going to use the state, and how you are making a state immutable. So these are the things I want to explain simply. So I have taken the simple example. You can implement this for any type of action and wherever you want to do this, especially in your web application. Whenever you are creating a real-time web application, if you are following the Flex architecture for your application data binding, then it is always advisable to use store, Redux store. Okay. And so this part is clear, I suppose. And if there is anything you want to discuss and anything you want to ask or anything you want to know about the component or any improvement in the sessions you want or anything you feel that this should be included can be discussed. We are left with 5 more minutes. After 5-10 minutes, we can end the session. And I today want to know how many participants are clear with immutable states, which we have seen in the example. Anything else? Anyone want to ask for or go for with? Yes. Anyone? Any doubts you have? You understood what external API is, why we need to fetch the data from the API and all? It's clear? How Redux Store methods get state and dispatch and subscribe and replace reducer helps? Everyone? Subscribe listener will add some changes to the listener, and it will be called anytime with an dispatcher, and some part of the state may be changed with the help of get state. Is already available, and you may call dispatch from change of listener, from one change of listener to another change of listener. And there is always an observe store, okay, which will send the observer. The listener is a function, there is a callback involved, and it will check with the state tree, and it might have changed or not, and inside callback to read the correct state tree. It is reasonable to expect that the store's reducer is a pure function, so you may compare references to some deep path of the state tree to learn whether the value has changed or not. In order to do this, you have to understand what are pure functions and impure functions. A function that unsubscribes the changed listener is usually handled if there is any need to unsubscribe the particular store data. Until and unless you don't go for usually to unsubscribe, and but nowadays the better way of coding they actually going for is store dot subscribe and handle the changes where there is an handle change completed at that time you call layer unsubscribe. So this is what is assigned to any unsubscribe. Finally, you have your replace reducer, which will take the next reducer, whichever the reducer function you have written, and the reducer component you are passing to it to calculate the state. It's an advanced API. You can say it's an advanced API, and it's the place where you implement code splitting, that is just splicing and all, and the same load of reducers dynamically, and you can implement the rendering mechanism for Redux. The next reducer is used for store for the user. Any doubts here? Combined reducers we have seen in the Flux architecture, Redux part itself. So what you are going to implement here will always be your Redux value. All right, participants, if you have any doubts, you can keep posting. And if you have any needs in understanding the session in some other manner or something, I usually explain you the theoretical concepts, and then I put my PowerPoint to explain the syntax, and then I take you to the coding part. And I hope you will be able to code all the concepts which is being handled in this session. Thank you so much. Anything else if you want to ask, please keep posting.